Owning a television station used to be a license to print money. Not anymore. Newspapers used to be the undisputed agenda setters and were very profitable too. Not anymore. The media are going through convulsive changes these days, and John Stackhouse, the former editor of the Globe and Mail, chronicles it all in Mass Disruption, 30 years on the front lines of a media revolution. And John joins us now here in our studios. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Steve.
First time here in our new dig, so pleasure to have you here. John, I plucked these numbers out of your book, and I want to share them with our viewers here. This is what's happened to the newspaper business and the advertising over the last decade and a half or so. We see what's happened in the United States in the first decade of the 21st century. Ad buys off 70%. Over 5 years in the United Kingdom, from £2 billion a year to $1 billion. And then over a 4-year period in Canada, off $470 million. This was the reality that you had to deal with when you were running the Globe and Mail from 2009 to 2014. Did you think when you had that job that you had a solution to that reality?
No, I don't think anyone believes or believed they had a solution. It's a storm. And when you're facing a hurricane-like storm, it's hard to see much sunshine or even daylight, and that's what media has been up against. But I hope the book draws out some enormous opportunities for journalists, because journalism, I think we would agree, is essential to any democracy, and we've got to find a way to make this work.
We will, after we go through the doom and gloom, we'll get to some solutions you see going forward. But initially, what does it say about how well legacy media are doing at their jobs or have done at their jobs when at the first sign of competition from digital coming along, tons of people and advertisers abandoned it?
A great point. Powerful media companies had a chance to get it right in the 1990s, and collectively they blew it. They ceded all the high ground to the Googles of the world, and they paid an enormous price. That doesn't make it right, but it's important to come to grips with that, certainly in hindsight. Fortunately, those media companies that have survived and have the capital to do something about it have started to do something about it over the last half decade ago, and a few of them actually are doing okay. The New York Times, for instance, The Guardian in a very different way, are showing how it can be done. So there's hope out there, but it is a struggle.
I know you want to get to the hope. I still want to deal with the doom and gloom, so we're going to go on this for a little bit more. Again, what does the flight of advertisers from the newspaper business say about how much advertisers truly valued being next to the copy that they were next to?
Well, first of all, a lot of the decisions were made by computers, and no one really saw that coming. Algorithms were created that decide what we see and what we click on. When we click on something, it takes us to another story, and then it determines which ads are going to pop up on your screen. This was an entirely new world, which a lot of advertisers actually were not ready for, and publishers did not at all foresee. I think more recently, advertisers have started to come to grips with the relationship that they've lost with viewers and readers. They were able to get eyeballs, and eyeballs are valuable, especially when you can aggregate them in the millions or billions, but the intimacy, if I can put it that way, that many advertisers want with consumers has been eroded, and they're looking for ways to rebuild that relationship.
There was something, though, at least I think there was, something kind of special about being, if you're a big name advertiser, being seen in the pages of the Globe and Mail brought you added cachet. Is that no longer the case?
No, that is still the case for a very small number of situations, and it's dwindling. If you want to have that cachet, it's still worth buying an ad, even though the economics may not make sense to a computer. There is a value and esteem that comes with being in a newspaper or being on a quality TV program, and that's why we see, for instance, during election campaigns or corporate disputes, people still turn to what's called legacy media.
Mm-hmm. John, you said it earlier. Journalism plays a special role in a democracy. It's protected in the Constitution, for example. And every time a legacy media dies, you've got people saying, "Oh my Lord, our democracy is at risk," and the public yawns. What are they not seeing that apparently so many people in legacy media are seeing?
Well, I'm not sure everyone in the public yawns, but there's certainly more yawning than fist pounding to do something about it. And I hope this book helps people at least listen to the fist pounders, if not pound some tables themselves. What we're losing is a certain amount of independent fact checking, some independent voices, many independent voices. And we're seeing it in smaller communities where I think the risks are greatest. We've seen the Guelph newspaper close, the Nanaimo newspaper close. That's very dangerous to those communities. Who's going to cover the city hall in Guelph or the police force in Nanaimo? That's what traditional media did. Citizen journalists are filling some of the void, and I've got a lot of respect for a great many so-called citizen journalists out there, but it's not the same. They don't have the resources. They don't have the organizations behind them to go to City Hall every day, and they don't have the big audience, which is something that is being lost. When you can bring a large audience, that shows power to people in City Hall or in the police force.
Do you think it's inevitable that there will be more shenanigans at political levels at City Hall if those local newspapers die?
I hesitate with the word inevitable, but likely. And I'm not sure it's going to be intentional, but it certainly will be unintentional, where people realize they're not going to be held to account like they were a few years ago.
So what do you think it is about legacy media that they have not been able to make the sale with vast numbers of the general public, that their health equals good democracy?
Well, that's an important question for everyone in media to reflect on, and every reader or viewer of media to reflect on. Why are we not willing to pay directly for news, for instance, is a big question. Quality news organizations like the New York Times, and to a certain extent the Globe and Mail, have been able to convince readers to pay. But most news organizations have not. The Toronto Star tried a paywall, and it did not work. And that's sobering, I would suspect, for any newsroom to have to come to grips with the reality that your beloved readers, who will argue with you and celebrate when you do things right, are not willing to pay, what is it, $1 a day, less than a cup of coffee for your news. I think the industry has failed to convince people collectively that news is worth paying for, and that's not something that happens overnight. It's not something that can be done in one ad campaign. It's going to take many years, maybe even a generation, to convince people that news is something that is worth paying for. But look, it's the same thing that movies and other industries are up against. We live in an age of free, and that's going to have consequences in terms of the quality of all that we're consuming for free.
I was interested to read in your book a survey that you did of your own section editors and their deputy editors when you were at the Globe and Mail. And of course, the audience has grazed significantly from, the paper that you get ink on your fingers reading and just going online. And here's what you found out. You found out 29 out of 33 of your section editors and their deputies spent most of their day on print. 29 out of 33. More than 3/4 of your content handlers too. What did you take from that?
There was a great book in the 1990s called The Innovator's Dilemma by a Harvard prof named Clay Christensen. And one of the points he discovered in any industry that is facing disruption is that the people involved in a legacy company, for good reasons, and they're talented people, tend to obsess with the legacy product. It's the same for TV shows, for instance, rather than obsessing with new channels or new products, which is what the new players, the so-called digital natives, are able to obsess with. We wrestled with this. I think every newsroom wrestles with this. And a big question comes up: should you create a separate company or a separate entity that's going to be purely digital? We opted to integrate it and use the strengths of one newsroom to serve two different audiences, one in print, one digitally. But it's hard because people are attached to the legacy product, partly for ego, partly for tradition, partly for impact. The newspaper still has, when it does things well, far more impact than many digital channels might.
I wonder, though, if you thought that your people were out of touch, given that so many more of your readers were moving over to online services, but they were sticking with the good old-fashioned newspaper.
That's what everyone going through disruption wrestles with. How do you get people to cross the divide? And for a lot of, most days they're straddling the divide, and that's not easy, but one by one you've got to get people into the new world. You can do that with shocks to the system, or you can do it by coaxing people. But one of the realities we discovered is readers tend to be ahead of newsrooms. That's probably true in any media, and that's important to listen to always listen to or notice where are your readers going and try to catch up with them.
One of the things that you did when you were running the Globe and Mail was, I think you went to Bloomberg, you went to the New York Times, you went to the Guardian, you wanted to go to some other places and find out how they're dealing with this massive disruption. What's the single most either interesting or important thing you learned from these other media about how well they're adjusting to the new reality?
Well, first of all, no one was adjusting to the new reality very well. So that was, in some ways, both concerning and reassuring that no one on the planet, even very well-resourced organizations, had found a solution. But among the important lessons I drew from world-class news organizations was the importance of focus. And this is true in any industry. If you are facing disruption, you've got to decide, and this is a hard decision, what are you remarkably good at, and what are people willing to pay for, whether it's with money or data or just spending more time with you, and double down on that, and cut things that may be more peripheral or marginal to your relationship with your readers. That's hard for any newspaper, which is newspapers like TV news programs have been built up over generations on breadth. They cover the waterfront, literally. And we live in an age when covering the waterfront is no longer necessary. People want specialization. They want to go to a news site that is going to be remarkably good at the topic or the issue that they're interested in.
In which case, let's talk about the future. But I do want to know this. You're not at the Globe anymore. Do you still read the Globe?
Yes.
Every day?
Every day.
How?
On my phone. I read all my news. I read all my news on my phone or on a laptop, but pretty much on my phone. I don't read print.
The former editor of the Globe and Mail does not get a physical newspaper.
That's right.
Why not?
Because the phone experience is fantastic. I get more news, it's faster, it's interactive, I can share it, I can tweet it, I can read what you're following on Twitter as well and comment on that or share that.
Do you not miss reading an actual newspaper?
There's something wonderful about a newspaper. The hierarchy design is a really important part of newspapers and magazines, but those elements are quite important, very different for a phone or a desktop or a laptop experience as well.
You guys spent all that money on that beautiful new printing process, which really produces the most elegant newspaper pages of anybody now, and you don't read it. That's shocking to me.
Why, Steve? It's not a crime. I think most readers are probably like me. They're switching in huge numbers to phone readership.
As we look at business models going forward, you know, the old days of sort of a proprietor owning a newspaper and making a fabulous profit by publishing an actual piece of paper, right? We know those days are in the rearview mirror. Nonprofit foundations, is that an option going forward?
Yes, and that's something I hope Canadians can start to come to grips with. I know there are many arguments against it, but we're seeing, we've got it in this country with the Walrus, for instance, nonprofit foundations being able to publish quality media. More prevalent in the United States, where they have, let's just say, friendlier tax treatment of foundations that allow foundations to publish what may be deemed as political activity. Certainly in this country, it might be deemed as political activity. But it's a great opportunity for news organizations to restructure themselves under a nonprofit model and be able to go out to readers or viewers and say, look, you can donate to this, or remember us in your will, and we'll build up a nest egg to invest in journalism.
And would the content still be behind a paywall?
Not necessarily. It could be, but it could also be free. There's a wonderful example, which I cite in the book, in the United States called the Texas Tribune, which is a nonprofit endowed by significant corporations like AT&T and Walmart and a lot of wealthy Texans, which seems to have remarkable independence from those commercial interests, and is now the largest, or it claims to be, the largest state-focused news organization in the United States. It's got 60 journalists working for it and is creating a whole new model of journalism in Texas.
What do you do about the fact that your future customers, the millennials, don't want to pay for anything? Is that a problem?
It's a challenge. It's a real challenge. But we're seeing in other areas, music, people are starting to pay. So there are different ways of structuring it through streaming. Netflix is a sign of hope as well in terms of people paying for content. And news, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how models like Blundell, which is coming from Europe to North America, how that takes on, where you would pay a certain amount of money per month and get access to a range of news sites. So there's it's a bit like Netflix, a bit of an opportunity there for news organizations to work together in ways they haven't in the past, share revenue, but develop that habit, especially among millennials, for payment.
Just as I am shocked that the former editor of the Globe and Mail doesn't read the actual physical newspaper anymore, I was shocked the other day having a conversation with a friend of mine who works in one of those big downtown buildings in Toronto, and he stopped his subscription of all newspapers coming into the house. I think he got a few of them and he stopped them all. I asked him why. He says, I get everything I need on Twitter now. I not only can follow what I think's important, but friends who want me to know about things will flip them over to me, and I don't need to get a daily newspaper at the house. I can get everything I need on Twitter. I didn't know whether to be mortified or impressed by that. Which are you?
Both.
You
Both.
are?
Yeah, because I find that happening to me. I'm a very active Twitter user as well as LinkedIn and Facebook. Terrific channels, really exciting, and you get exposed to not just news but ideas and conversations that you would otherwise not be privy to. But I often stop, especially, and say, wait a second, have I been exposed to some independent hierarchy of what matters? And I'll go to websites or to apps, be it the Globe and Mail or the New York Times or the Guardian or Huffington Post or Bloomberg, on and on, just to see how they are kind of rank ordering stories, what kind of headlines they're putting on it, what they believe is important, is something that we can lose if we spend too much time or all of our time in social media.
That is the danger, isn't it? I mean, the nice thing about reading an actual newspaper is as you flip the pages, you are going to bump into stories you might not necessarily have sought out, but you've bumped into them by accident. Maybe you'll be interested in them and learn something. Is that experience now going to be of the past?
Well, that's the counter argument, though, is that is exactly what social media provides for you. I mean, every day on Twitter, I'm sure you find this as well. I'm delighted by the stories or ideas that I'm exposed to that the Globe and Mail or the New York Times would not have given me. You might have tweeted something, or others will, that I'll immediately be interested in. So it's beautiful that we have both, or that we have all of this. I think we're living in a golden age of information and what should be a golden age of journalism. Managing it, whether you're a publisher or a news consumer, is something we're still working out.
Let's finish up in our last couple of minutes here on this sort of grand bet that I guess Toronto Star and La Presse are banking on, which is essentially to give it away for free on a downloadable app versus the Globe and other companies which are putting up paywalls, hoping that the content is important enough that people will still pay for it. Who are you betting on?
I truly hope what they're doing works because they're both outstanding news organizations and need the resources as well as the big audiences that these devices can bring together for them. What I find interesting to watch is whether they can sustain an audience around curation by selecting stories and saying, this is what's important, this is what you may want to spend time with, whether it's reading or watching a video or interacting with a graphic. That goes against the grain of certainly that we're seeing in social media. Also curious to see if advertisers, and this is the big question, the million-dollar question for both of them. Are advertisers going to stick with this? Because if advertisers do not stick with those tablet products of the Star and La Presse, it'll be over. They've got really impressive numbers in terms of downloads and the amount of time people are spending. That's fantastic. People are spending more time with their apps than they spend with their traditional news sites. We're not seeing the revenue, though, and this is particularly true for the Star, from advertisers, and that's my big worry. So are advertisers saying, you know what, the audience isn't big enough for us to spend significant money on it? They'll not get their investment back if they don't get advertisers coming into it.
You've got, I think it's the editor of La Presse, quoted as having said, if we're going to die, I'd rather die trying something new because free news and information is irreversible. You agree?
I think it is irreversible for metro dailies, for a lot of publications, not for strong, I want to say niche publications, which may be the wrong characterization of the New York Times or the Globe and Mail, but quality publications that have very specific target audiences, I believe, not only can get them to pay, they have to get users to pay. That's a great revenue model if you can do it. But for most daily publications, yeah, free is irreversible.
Postmedia is for sale. What do you make of that?
Well, they've got, like all newspaper companies in the world, they've got serious challenges and they need new capital. Media needs capital to develop new technologies, and their current financiers, owners, don't have the capital to get them to where they need to be. They have cut everything to the bone. I don't know how you could go into Postmedia and cut anymore.
And merge newsrooms and that kind of thing as well.
Exactly. They bought, so they went through cost cutting. They kind of followed the playbook and then merged to develop scale. Scale's really important in media. You look at the New York Times, it's trying to become a global media company because it wants scale. So Postmedia tried to develop scale by buying the Sun chain. Good, smart thing to do. Seems like it's not enough. So they've got to get that new capital. But just to give you a sense of how capital-starved the industry is right now, the Orange County Register, was once one of the great smaller newspapers or mid-sized newspapers of America, sold this month for $50 million. Used to be worth $1 billion. So when people are looking at newspapers, they're essentially equating it with the size of a mansion in an American city, saying that these great titles are worth not much more than the property that they sit on.
There was quite a back and forth in the pages of both the National Post and the Toronto Star not too long ago between the two publishers who said, basically, well, Paul Godfrey, the National Post, said, look, we'd love to have a Canadian buyer, and nobody ponied up. And then John Hundrick from the Toronto Star said, wait a second, we made an offer, you didn't like it, but we made an offer, so don't say there's no offer on the table here. Do you think they're players in this at all?
Well, one should not rule out anything, but so much has changed for all newspapers and for Torstar since they last expressed interest in Postmedia. One of the questions that surfaced in that debate was whether we need to rethink Canadian ownership restrictions on newspapers. Is it now time to say, okay, it's okay for foreigners to own Canadian newspapers? We as a country decided in the 1970s that newspapers are part of the national fabric, the social fabric, and need to be protected and held by Canadians. Of course, with the digital revolution, that seems very antiquated. We've got lots of great media in this country, Huffington Post, Vice Media, that are foreign-owned and have good Canadian editorial operations, and yet the newspapers of this country are not allowed legally to be owned by foreigners. So the Postmedia case may surface that if they cannot find enough Canadian interest in either the whole company or its constituent parts. They may have to turn to the government and say, we need to open this up to foreigners.
One more follow-up on that. If the Toronto Star, as it wanted to last time, made an offer this time for the Postmedia properties, you would have a newspaper empire that owned all of Torstar's newspapers, all of Postmedia's newspapers, all of the Sun newspapers. I don't know what percentage of the newspapers in Canada that is, but it's humongous. Is that a concern?
Oh yes, it should be a concern, but it has to be evaluated in the context of all the other new media that they don't control. Things like the Huffington Post or Vice Media or Vox that are quite influential in this country. So newspapers, while still important, are sharing the stage with a lot of new actors. But if there are no other buyers, what are the alternatives? Again, we get back to the foreign question. Are we willing to, for the sake of going against concentration, willing to allow foreign owners in the sector? That's an important question for, at least for Canadians to debate.
And the other big development last week was the publishing job at the Toronto Star is vacant. John Cruikshank is retiring. He'd been there, I guess, 7 years in that job, said he was going to stay for 5. He ended up staying for 7. What did you think of that when you saw that?
Yeah, I guess it was surprising. I'll declare up front, John's a friend of mine. He's done an extraordinary job as publisher. He outlived the job or stayed longer than he had anticipated, and it's a real grind. He did some remarkable things with the Star, and I think felt he had done the big stuff that he wanted to do. He certainly enhanced the Atkinson principles as the core of the Star, and that's really important for a media organization to have that kind of purpose. And he has, I think, established that without question. He launched the tablet edition of the Star, which is, it's coming along, but it's still struggling.
Work in progress.
It's a work in progress, and I think he feels like it's time for someone else to take the torch and run with it.
They're not replacing him, though, right? Which is a bit strange.
Not yet. It'll be interesting to see what they do. There are other media organizations, newspapers that have sort of faded away, if I can describe it that way, the publisher's role, and tried to bring in a more of an executive, traditional CEO role rather than than having a CEO and a publisher.
If you had to make a prediction, which is worth the money you pay for it, but let's try this anyway. There are 4 newspapers in Ontario's capital city, 4 daily newspapers, and that's not counting the free ones you can pick up on the subway. Who's alive in 5 years?
It's a great question, and I can't believe how long we have been asking that question. I remember back in the early 1980s, I was with B. Hondrick, John Hondrick's father, who towered over the Star. He was the publisher at the time. And asked him, there were 3 newspapers, the Sun, the Star, and the Globe. I said, can this city sustain 3 newspapers? And he said, absolutely not. There will be only 2 newspapers in the city, and the Star will be one of them. That was 30, 35 years ago, and we're now up to 4. But I think most people would agree, most people in the industry would agree that this city cannot sustain 4 paid newspapers. So the Star, Sun, Post, and Globe. I think the Star and the Globe have the most secure franchises. How the Sun evolves, a great tabloid. What becomes of tabloids in the digital age? Most tabloids in the world are trying to figure that out. And then the Post, as a clearly right-of-center publication, whose main readership is in a liberal-dominated city, is an interesting challenge. That's a critical voice to maintain, but how do they do that as a standalone newspaper, standalone as the flagship of a chain? I realize that, but in this city as a standalone publication is the challenge that still has to be worked out.
John, it's a fascinating and frightening time to be in this business, isn't it? It sure is. Mass disruption, 30 years on the front lines of a media revolution, is John Stackhouse's latest contribution to this issue, and we're grateful you came into TVO tonight to talk about it.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.